What a piece of junk.
She'll make 0.5 past light speed. She may not look like much, but she's got it where it counts, kid. I've made a lot of special modifications myself.
Take a few moments to get the coordinates from the navigomputer.
You kidding? The rate they're gaining?
Traveling through hyperspace ain't like dust and crops, boy. Without precise calculations, we'd fly right through a star or bounce too close to a supernova and then it end your trip real quick, wouldn't we?
What's that flashing?
We're losing our deflector shield. Both trap yourselves in. I'm gonna make a jump to light speed.
What's up, everybody? I know it's been a long time since I've posted a tutorial, but I'm back. I'm back, baby. And today I'm going to be showing you guys how to make the star field and the kind of warp effect that you see in like Star Wars or other sci-fi shows, maybe even Star Trek. Just something like that. And you saw in the beginning video, let me go to it really quick so you can see the part that I'm talking about. It is right here. So you can see that star field in the background. You can see that the stars actually will kind of expand outward and then come towards the screen. Right there. And they stretch out like that and then just continue to regenerate. There's actually two different particle effects going on. There's the stretching, and then at a certain point I just switch out to randomly or constantly create those lines. So I'm going to show you how to do that really quick. I'm going to go ahead and create a new document, and I'll go ahead and start off by just creating a background, and I'll make it black. And this is actually really simple to do. I'll create a new vector. I'll call this star. And I'm just going to use the pencil tool. And I'll go ahead and select white for the stroke color. And we'll just put a dot. Actually, for the warping we'll do... Well, I'm going to do two different tutorials, kind of. The first one's just going to be a star field. So I'll just create a dot there. And then I'll go ahead and create a new particle layer. I'll call this star field. You can call it whatever you want. And I'll just drop it in there. And you can see the particles just start shooting those dots everywhere. We just want to create a star field really quick. So I'll do particle options. I'm going to zero out everything. So I'll just select all of these: direction, acceleration, rate, speed, and all of those to 0, and we'll put like, let's do 1,000 particles, and we'll preview those also. So we'll put 1,000 and 1,000, and then we'll go ahead and change the source width and height so they stretch across the screen like that. And then to make them more realistic in 3D, we can go ahead and do sort depth, and that'll push some of them forward and some back. And it's also good to do source depth, because when you do that, now these are non-moving, so I'm going to just so you can see what this looks like, you can actually start changing the camera angle. Oops. Let's go ahead and double click the background layer and set immune to camera movements and apply. The reason I just did that is so I can select the camera and actually spin and rotate the stars, and the background stays still. So it's a little hard to see, but let's do an orbit so you can kind of see that the stars are kind of in 3D space. Now they're all spread out forward and backwards. So if I go into that particle layer, I can stretch those out even farther, change the width and height some more, and you get this really cool star field that's in 3D space. So you can maneuver the camera. Oops, let me reset reset the view. So you get this nice star field, which is really easy to do. But if you want to make one that looks more organic, or like you're flying through regular space, let's go back. Let me reset everything. And in the star layer, we're just going to animate it a little bit. And what we're going to do is go anywhere in the timeline. I'm just going to go to 120. And then I'm going to click the transform layer button right here. And we're going to change the Z position. The Z position is where this artwork is sitting in 3D space, forward and backward. The X and Y is up, down, and left and right. But we want to change the Z position. So this is going to look like it's making it go up, but it's actually making it come forward. So I'm going to select Z, and I'm going to just use my mouse wheel, and I'm going to start cranking it up. You can see that dot, or that one star, is actually moving up and off camera. But in 3D space, what it's actually doing is coming towards us. And the reason why it's going up and to the left is because the dot started out right here. And in 3D space, it's going to, perspective-wise, it's going to shoot off to the side over here. If it was down to the lower bottom right, it'd shoot this way. So you can see that it's just traveling off camera. And if I look at the particles, you can see that all of those dots are trying to, because it's in a particle layer, they're all moving forward. And it looks like you're traveling through space. Let me render that really quick and see how that looks. Export animation. We'll just do 100 frames just to see what it looks like, and do it at half its size, just so it renders really quick. And stars. And let's see real quick. Shouldn't take too long to render. And this is a good way to create, you know, if you're doing a space or sci-fi adventure or something and you want a star field looking like it's moving, this is a way to do it slower. Not the warp effect, but just having a star field kind of moving. And, oh, they're disappearing. And that's because I don't think I have the particle set right. A lot of the times I have to mess with the settings just to kind of figure out how to make these work correctly. So the reason why that's not working is because I don't have a lifetime set for the particles. So let's go into the particle, the star field, select that, and we know that I set the star animation to 120 frames. So I'm actually going to go into the particle options and set the lifetime of frames to 120. And then that way the dots should go, or for the most part at least, go all the way off screen. But they're kind of popping in too. You can see in the animation that they just kind of pop in and appear and then fly off stage. So we're just going to make those fade in and out really quick. So I'm going to zoom in really close to that one star animation. If you can see, if I hit Q, and I'm on Anime Studio 11, so I'm going to hit Q and select that one dot, that little speck, and when it's selected it becomes checkered, and I'm going to make it invisible for a few seconds. So I'll click the stroke color, I'll turn the opacity all the way down and hit OK. And it should still be selected, so we'll go forward to about frame 12, select the stroke again, and turn that opacity up. So now what's happening is that star is actually going to fade in. You can't see it in the preview or in the work window. and then it's gonna fly off screen. So let's check that out and see. You can kind of see some of those fading in, even in this preview window, which looks a lot better. So let's render that really quick too. We'll export with the same. I'm just going to do test on my desktop. And again, this should look better because I extended the lifetime of the keyframes to match the animation of the star that I just did. And you can tell it looks good so far in the preview, but we'll see what it looks like in the final render. So it's really easy to do. It's just more of messing around with the particle settings. Now see, I'm getting blinking particles, and I'm not sure why. So some of them are working good, and some aren't. So I'm not sure why that is. Maybe it's the velocity. Let's turn that off. And I'm going to turn the source depth down a little bit. Or maybe let's leave it at 0. See what that looks like. I'm going to try that with no depth, because we're making the depth by using the Z axis. So export animation one more time. Test 2. And I'm sorry that this is longer and I'm messing around with it, but that's kind of I wanted you guys to also see that it's more of messing around with settings more than anything. The animation itself is extremely easy to do, but you want to kind of fiddle with stuff to get it to work right, and oftentimes that's what I'm doing. So I always leave in my mistakes, or talk too much and say too much, just so you guys can see the process of how it's made. So that looks a lot better. I don't see any blinking. You can see a lot of the stars are fading in, which looks a lot better. And you can just have that keep repeating. And then all you have to do is slap over an overlay. Like in the Star Wars tutorial, I have the Millennium Falcon here, and the star field's just in the background. So that's how you would do just a moving star field. But now, let me hide that, and I'm going to show you how I made the warp effect. So I'm going to make another new layer, and I'll just call this Star Warp. And this is also extremely easy to do. It's the same basic principle. I'm going to use the pencil tool again. Actually, I'm going to do add points, which is this button right here. And I'm just going to draw a straight line. I'll hit U so I can create a shape. So I'm selecting the line. If you're in MOHO 12, you're not going to hit, you're going to select this and then hit create shape. And actually, I'll just do that on here, just because if you hit spacebar, that's how I create shapes in Anime Studio 11 is spacebar. And that actually will create that line. If you're in MOHO, go ahead and let me undo that and then hit create shape up here. And that just creates a stroke. And I'm going to hit T and select that top point. And I'm just going to move it straight down on top of the other star or other point. So I'm going to go into the timeline. And I'm going to, wherever I want to make the warp start, I'll go ahead and go to like 96. I'm going to go ahead and hit G or T and grab, actually G, and I'm selecting both of those points. I'm just dragging over and selecting both of them, then hitting T, and I'm moving them. That's just to create a keyframe for both of those points. So they're both just sitting there. And then from 96, I'll go ahead and however long you want to make your warp lines to be, you can go into the timeline anywhere. I'll hit T, and I'm going to grab one of the points and hold shift down, and I'm going to extend it straight up. Like that. So it's sitting there by itself, and then at 96, it expands upward like that. So we'll do the same thing. I'll create a new particle layer. I'll call this warp, or light speed, or jump, or whatever you want to call it. I'll grab that one star that we just created that simple animation for. I'll drag it in the folder. And you can see right here, particles options aren't set correctly yet, so we'll go ahead and do 1000 again. Star warp, it's 130, 128. So we'll just change the particle lifetime to 138 or 128. That's what I said. Let's go ahead and change the zero everything else out, the velocity, spread, direction, acceleration, rate, and spread, all that good stuff. And then we'll change the source height again, and the depth, or width, I'm sorry. So it spreads them out like that. Spread them out more. Oops, 1000. We want a lot of them. And oops, no velocity. So right now we have this right here, but we need to, it's going straight up, but so instead of changing the XYZ in the transform layer tool right here, we're going to go to this rotate XY, and actually we're going to go to the star warp, and we're going to rotate click on the rotate XY, and we're going to, under the X rotation, we're going to turn it 90 degrees. And basically what this is doing is changing that animation to be rotated downwards, so instead of going up, it's going to come towards us. And let's see what that looks like. So because we rotated its X position, you can see those stars actually shoot out towards us. It's very similar to the speed lines that I created a long time ago, but this isn't right. Particle options, I think, let's do lifetime 0. There we go. So in this case, I'm setting the particle option lifetime to 0 because I want all of those animations to kind of start at the same time. So we're setting it at 0, so all of these different particles animate when we have that set. So star warp, it starts at 96, goes to 138. So if you go into our animation, go back to frame 0, you can see when we hit 96, that's when all the warping starts. Which is just how it happens in like Star Wars. And it's a cool effect because every single pixel or every single star actually will animate at the same time. Now you can see the animation doesn't quite, when we get to 128, it doesn't go off stage or off the canvas. So you have to fiddle with the animation even more. So what I did, when it's rotated like this, you can't really see the animation anymore because it's flat coming towards the camera. So I'm going to go back to the rotate XY and set it to 0 again, just so I can see it. And this time I have it extending, but I'm also going to go to 96. Let's go to, I don't know, somewhere in between. I'm going to use the transform layer tool. I'll click on it just so we can have a starting keyframe. And then, I don't know, I'll just go forward some, and I'm just going to drag it off screen. So I'm going to go to 144 and just hold shift down and make it go straight up and off camera. And we'll see if that's enough to have it go off. Oops. We'll go back to the star warp, and we got to turn it back again. So I'll type in, well, let's take a look at it without it. So I don't have the XY rotated, so you can see now when I animate it, all the stars just shoot upwards in that same animation. So again, this trick really is just going to the particle and rotating the X to 90 degrees. So now let's go there. You'll see oops, it's going up. I don't want it to go up. Okay, I'm leaving this in. So we don't actually want to do the transform layer. Let's take that out. Go back. Put that back to 0. And instead of animating the layer to move upward, we're just going to animate the points themselves. So, let me see. Let me hit T. And this is a little bit confusing, but I'm hitting T and I'm selecting the points themselves, which is different than selecting the layers. This is grabbing the points themselves and moving them up. So I'm going to hit 144, and it looks like I'm doing the same thing. I'm holding shift and pulling it up off screen, but this is actually different than transforming the layer. Even though it looks exactly the same, I'm animating the points, not the layer. So this should look better. We'll see. Oh, forgot to turn the X again. Okay, so when I scroll through, we hit 96. That's better, but I don't know. They seem to be falling. That's weird. Let me undo. Okay. Here we have the regular animation. Let me go here, hit T, and do that. Let's see what that does. And rotate 90 degrees. Let's check it. There we go. So again, I know it's long-winded and the tutorial is a lot longer than it should be, but it's because you need to kind of mess around with things to get them to work correctly. But 96, then all of the particles start moving. Some of them still didn't go all the way off, but that's okay because in the Star Wars animation I just made for the intro, I actually made 2 of these different ones. And now I am going to use a different particle layer. So I'm going to duplicate this warp one, go into the star warp, and turn this one off. And I'm going to go back into this. This is the duplication of the star warp, and what I'm going to do is make continuous beams come out like a speed lines. So we'll go into this. I'll hit 0. So we have this animation. Oh, let's get rid of this. 0. So we have the copy of that animation, but I want it to start from frame 1, like that. So what I did was I just grabbed the keyframes and I just pulled them to the beginning. Like that. And then on this one, I'm changing the particle options. Oops. Rotate. Rotate the X to 90. Remember to do this on frame 0. I think that's what was messing up the animation before, where it was kind of dropping a little bit. So we rotated them. Go into the actually, we don't even want this to stretch because we don't want to see that repeating. So let's go back in here. It's kind of a pain to rotate it back and forth. What we're going to do is, so we have continuous continuous lines. I'm going to go to frame 1. I'm going to grab and pull the line out like that. Actually, I was probably better off just making a new one. So I have a line here. You know what? Let's just scrap that. Okay, frame 1. So we just have the line drawn. I'm going to hit T, select the line itself, go to frame 24, and drag it off. That's all I should have done in the first place. Is do that. I'll go ahead and rotate the X. So now it's just moving like that, but this time we're going to go into the particle layers and we're just going to do randomized playback and lifetime of frames will do 25 or 24. Wait. There we go. So no, don't check randomized playback. Make sure you have lifetime of frames at the same or a little bit more than the animation itself, and then they'll just keep regenerating. So what I did for the Star Wars animation was the continual warp. Let's go ahead and rename that so you guys know. This is US. I don't know how to spell it. US. Continuous warp. Let's just say I know how to spell that. And hit OK. So this particle layer is the one that's just constantly running. This warp particle layer is the animation where it starts. And goes like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to where that warp kind of ends, like right about there, and I'll double click that warp layer and uncheck visible and apply. So it's going to hide it. It's just going to make it disappear. And then on that same one, I'm going to do the opposite. So we'll go to continuous warp, we'll go to frame 0 and double click it and hide it. So we'll uncheck visible, apply. We'll go to 120. Right there where it disappears, and we'll double click the continuous warp and show visible and hit apply. So now we have an animation of two separate particle layers kind of merging into one. So it starts off static, star field, warps, and then it just looks like it keeps on going. So it's actually switching from one to the other. And that's how you can create a warp. And that's it. Again, sorry the tutorial's so long, but it's been a while. I'm a little rusty. And just to let you guys know, for my patrons, I will be sending this to you, the work file, just so you can check it out. So it's got the 2 characters, Pop Toogie characters, the kind of Han Solo and Luke character. And I did recreate the cockpit of the Millennium Falcon in there also. And then you guys can also check out and see how I did everything. I used a little camera shake. I set all of the background to not move for camera movements, but then I had the shaking. I just added a little shake in the camera to get that effect. So that's it. If you have any questions or comments, just leave them down below. And again, I'm very sorry to all my YouTube subscribers. It's been a while. And I'm going to really try hard this month to get a lot more tutorials out and a lot more files to my patrons and just be a better creator in general. But yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching.